All right, so hello everyone, and welcome back to Alpha Art Gallery's Meet the Artist series. My name is Mariza Gomez, a curatorial intern here at the gallery, and today I'm joined by Shara Bailey, an exhibiting artist in our upcoming New Brunswick Art Saloon oil sculpture and mixed media exhibition. Hi, Shara, How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. And so let me go to the first thing. Let's go back to when you received your PhD. How does your career path as a professor impact your choice of artistic subject matter, specifically for the American West and abandoned places?
Sure. It's funny. My career path took me to Arizona for graduate school, and I ended up spending 9 years there studying anthropology. And during that time, I was surrounded by these vast landscapes, the big skies of the American Southwest, and they had this really huge impact on me. They gave me a sense of freedom that I don't think I ever felt growing up on the East Coast. I'm originally from the Philadelphia area, and it always felt a little bit claustrophobic to me by comparison. So, during that time, I also found myself attracted to abandoned places, these kind of quiet, overlooked scenes, like an empty, park bench, a little light in an abandoned building. And when I eventually came back to the East Coast to be a professor at NYU, I think I started painting the natural, the Arizona scenes because I missed Arizona. Um, and uh, and that's what I really missed about the West. But it was also about that time that I started looking for beauty in other places, and sometimes those places were really unexpected. And at first glance, anthropology and painting might seem like two very different pursuits, but anthropology is grounded in science, and painting is much more emotional. But to me, they're really deeply connected. The way I see it, they're both uncovering stories from just kind of glimpses of the past. So in anthropology, I study fossils, like I study bones and teeth, and they give me little clues about ancient past lives. And in my art, I'm drawn to abandoned buildings for the same reason. They're kind of these, I don't know, these physical echoes of human presence. So just like fossils, they're places that are shaped both by time and by decay.
Fascinating. That's amazing, Shara. So my next question for you is, was there a moment of inspiration in your life that sparked your fascination with the landscapes that you paint?
Yeah, and it makes me smile because there definitely was a moment, and it came even before I moved to Arizona. I think my fascination with these kind of big open landscapes started in 1989 when I was visiting Ruidoso, New Mexico, and I was there on vacation. It was summer, it was monsoon season, and a heavy rainstorm had just passed, and the clouds began to break, and this I don't know this the sky kind of lit up with this most beautiful, extraordinary sunset, and I was in love. I was in love with the dramatic sky, the silhouette of the trees, the mountains, and just this sheer vastness of it all. And I remember standing there, and I was just completely captivated by the drama. And I think that's the first time that I felt the really emotional power of a landscape. And I don't know, it planted something in me. And I kind of feel like I've been chasing that feeling ever since. And that it probably comes across in my paintings.
Yeah, of course. Like your paintings have always, like to me, has come across with that type of beauty of the simple and the beauty and romanticizing those landscapes and those aspects, and that's extremely fascinating to me. My third question for you is, from observing your work, you tend to focus on certain angles of the landscapes and places that are unusual. Can you tell me more about the choice of angles and the perspective you chose for the for those oil pieces, such as no firearms?
Sure. Yeah, it's great that you picked up on that. I think I tend to gravitate towards angles that are I don't know, maybe slightly off or unexpected, like in alleys, back streets, places you wouldn't usually stop to notice. And I mean, I certainly, the ones I choose always evokes some kind of a feeling, an emotional feeling for me, like a quietness, and sometimes there's tension there too. So the angles aren't really just, they're not just compositional choices, they're also kind of like an emotional entry point into my paintings. So with the painting No Firearms, I feel like the angle draws you into this sense of stillness. It was inspired. I actually went to Red Hook for a completely different reason. I was in Red Hook, Brooklyn. I wanted to take pictures of the abandoned grain terminal that's there. And so I was waiting. I was there very early in the morning, and I was waiting for the sun to rise, and so I could get, the warm light. And this lit up door caught my eye. It was this kind of the stark light above the door, the composition of the wires, the window in the upper right hand corner, this kind of oddly specific no firearm sign, and it all felt like quietly dramatic, but also a little bit absurd. Like at first I thought the sign was kind of funny. Like, why would you need to tell people not to come into this really boring looking building with a firearm? But then I don't know, the more I looked at it, it struck this kind of darker note. It seemed like a commentary on the way our lives are just, I don't know, saturated with gun culture, even in places where it seems completely unnecessary. And so the contrast in No Firearms, so between this like stillness and tension, the light and the shadow and the humor, but also a little bit of sadness, it's something I was just trying to capture. And the angles and the framing made me feel like some things either just happened or it's about to.
Yeah, and that's extremely fascinating. So I noticed that in No Firearms, it was very much like that unusual building that it has that no firearm sign. And I agree with your notion that and the gun culture in America and everything along those lines, it's a crazy time to live in, but it's also representative of our culture, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating to me. My next question for you is that you said in your artist statement that beauty is where you find it. Can you elaborate further on what it means to you as an artist with a natural perspective and appreciation of your environment to find the beauty in places not so obvious to the everyday person who is not an artist?
Sure. This kind of beauty or magical in the mundane is something I've been fascinated with. Even before I started painting it, I would photograph it. And I think it's easy for us all to get caught up in our routines, our responsibilities, our own heads. And when that happens, I think we forget to notice the world around us or to appreciate it. And I have a practice of gratitude, daily gratitude. And I think that beauty is one of the simplest and really most accessible things that we can be grateful for. We just have to look for it. And often I think, and this is what I'm trying to capture, the beauty isn't where we expect to find it. So for example, when I moved back to the East Coast to work in New York City, I really miss the dramatic landscapes of the American West. I mean, I really missed it, the open skies, the light, just the sheer scale of it all. And I miss being surrounded by beauty all the time. But one day I was riding, I just remember it so vividly. I was riding this jitney back from Port Authority, back to New Jersey where I was living, and I was feeling kind of sad, and I was looking out the window, and I noticed this sunset, beautiful sunset, reflecting off of these mirrored buildings across the Hudson. And I don't know, it just reminded me that beauty can take different forms, you know? Sometimes it's hidden in a reflection or a quiet corner somewhere or in things that people just aren't even looking for. And so I think as an artist, a part of my job is to notice those moments and then to even maybe help other people see them too.
That's extremely fascinating because yeah, I agree. The artist it has the responsibility of forming that perspective and you communicate that very well in your landscapes, in your
Thank
natural
you.
perspective as well. My next question for you is you mentioned that Arizona has beautiful landscapes full of cascading clouds and a glowing sunset. Is Arizona a place that you take specific inspiration from as an artist? What other states have you visited and that gave you similar feeling of artistic inspiration?
Yeah, I think Arizona is always going to be foundational for me as an artist. Just it introduced me to the vast landscapes and the and dramatic skies and the ever-changing clouds and the sunsets. And I think that really made a lasting impression on just even the way I see the world. The sense of scale the drama in the sky, it taught me how to look. And I don't mean like looking outward, but I also mean, sometimes you have to look upwards, right? And I think this habit of looking deeply is still with me. And to your question, I haven't lived in other states that inspire me as much as Arizona, but I do visit them. And so I go to Montana every year. I have been doing this for about 15 years. I have friends who live out there, and sometimes I spend up to a month at a time in Bozeman, Montana. And I think Montana gives me a little bit of what I missed about Arizona, because it has these big skies, it has these powerful thunderstorms with these beautiful clouds and that feeling of openness. And it also, in terms of the built environment, it has similar traces of history and remnants of the American West. And so the places in Montana that inspire me, these old grain elevators, abandoned buildings, they've really been a major source of inspiration for many of my paintings, like the ones that are behind me right now. And I think they give, I mean, I think like this is Scrubby's. This is an old car wash behind me. I think they're like a monument, like a quiet monument to forgotten lives.
That is so fascinating. I love that. I love how you see those perspectives from with the rose-colored glasses with those environments. Um, it's so fascinating to me. So
Thanks.
my next question for you is when you observe places with a less aesthetically oriented landscape, what particularly draws you into the landscape and the places that fascinate you the most? Are there elements of the landscapes that pique your curiosity?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I really have been enjoying painting the built landscape, and what draws me into those, the ones that I've been painting recently that aren't conventionally beautiful, is I don't know, their honesty, right? They're not obviously impressive. They just kind of exist, and they've been weathered by time and use, and they've suffered from neglect. And I think those things are what draw me in particular. So. And I think this relates a little bit to anthropology because I'm drawn to signs of past human presence. So for me, like these decaying structures, maybe an empty road or an old fishing shack, right, that's kind of leaning into the wind, they make me wonder, like, who built this? Like, what happened here, and why was it left behind? Like, why has it been abandoned? So there's this kind of quiet tension in the landscapes that I paint um, between like what was and what is, right? What is now, kind of between the built and the natural environment. A couple of people recently have compared the mood of my paintings to Edward Hopper's work. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I mean, it's like his huge compliment. But I think, and of course, I don't think I'm nearly as good as him, but I think like him, I'm interested in solitude, stillness, and light. And of course, I filter it through my own experience. But I think I'm always looking for traces of humanity in places that are kind of half forgotten, looking for like dignity in these old, abandoned, overlooked spaces. And I think I love these less aesthetic places because they aren't trying to be beautiful. They're just beautiful because I don't know, they're just real, you know?
Yeah, I totally get that because the reason I wanted to ask you this question in the first place because I attend a university in Texas and I know friends who are in anthropology and so hear your perspective of your how your art influences anthropology because I know a lot of creatives myself who are also in an anthropological major
Hmm.
and so I thought
Yeah.
it's so fascinating how you connect the earth to that or even other types of anthropology like cultural anthropology or forensic or physical anthropology something along those lines it's
Yeah.
fascinating what those majors can do and besides even just art majors it's incredible.
I know so many people in anthropology that are creatives, either doing art or music or many other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that it's possible that their kind of natural attraction to those like natural scapes and those environments like kind of influences that artistic landscape for them, like and just in nature
Yeah.
in general.
I think so. I think if you turn it around, to be a good scientist, you have to be a creative,
Yeah.
right? Because you really have to come up with your own ideas. You have to think deeply about things. You have to think, come from different angles. And so I think there's really is a complement between both things for sure.
Yeah, that is extremely fascinating. Um, and so my next question for you is your style of landscape painting tends to be specific to the angle, like I had mentioned earlier. Do you paint in plein air style outdoors or capture photos and then reference the moments captured for the oil paintings?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My teacher, Valerie Larco, is an amazing built environment landscape painter. She does all of her work plein air and then like most of it plein air and then finishes it back in the studio. So I've taken classes with her, done plein air. But I think mostly I look for scenes that evoke this kind of quiet tension and emotional quality that's kind of fleeting because of the light, right? And because the light creates the mood. And so because it's fleeting, I photograph it mostly, and then I bring it back to my studio and then I paint it there. I mean, some of them, I'm not sure if this is going to be in the show, but there's a painting I did of the railway station in Alair State Park. That one I actually did a lot of it outdoors in plein air, and then I finished it back in the studio. And that's really to get all the details in, right? So I love being able to slow down because you have to paint fast when you're painting outside. So I like to slow down in the studio, really dig into those details because I think when I'm doing that, that's where I really feel the most connected to the scene.
That's amazing to me. It's so fascinating how you see the world and how you see that landscape. It's extremely fascinating.
Thank
Um,
you.
my next question is going off of your fascination with duality and finding meaning in the small aspects of life. How does your background in anthropology influence your perspective on natural forms in comparison to urban settings? Which you probably answered a little bit earlier, but I would love for you to expand on that.
Sure. It's kind of funny because if you think that what I study human evolution and which are usually under layers of sediment that have been stratified, right? And so it's kind of when I think of that, where the fossils are covered by layers, accumulating layers. That's one aspect of what I do. And when I paint, I'm painting things that have had layers taken away. But I think in general, anthropology has taught me to pay attention to um, to how humans shape their environments, but also how the environment in turns shapes us, right? And so whether I'm looking at a fossil tooth or a fossil bone or an abandoned building, I think I'm interested in the traces of what's been left behind and what we can tell about the past of either that human or that building. And so I think that perspective helps me see that, as I said, like both natural landscapes and urban ones are layered. And in the case of the built environment, they're layered with human presence, but also human absence. So whether it's a desert ruin, an old water tank in the desert or a rusted out sign on a warehouse, I think they both speak to issues of time and memory and even and change, I guess. So my interest in duality, right? Beauty, decay, emptiness, presence. I think that comes directly from an anthropological mindset. I find a lot of meaning in the small details as I was just talking about. And so like whether it's just details on a rock or the graffiti I'm painting on a building, it doesn't really matter. I think they're artifacts for sure, and I think they give clues to the lives that were lived in and also lived around these spaces.
Fascinating, amazing. And so, going off of that as well, when you're observing these spaces that you feel intimately connected with, in what ways do these spaces communicate their historical past to you? What kind of emotions go through your mind when visualizing the past of those specific places?
Um, I feel very emotionally connected to my paintings, and so that makes it sometimes hard to part with them, because like I'm thinking of the Story Mill one I painted. I don't know if it's in the show, but it's on my website in Montana. It's kind of like these buildings they're holding on to something, like they're suspended between what they were and what they're eventually going to become, right? Or be deconstructed eventually, right? And so when I'm observing or photographing them, I find myself imagining the lives that once moved through them. Who was living there? What were they doing? Who built it? Who locked that door for the last time? What conversations happened, under that light? And I think what speaks to me the most is the way it leaves a residue, right? So peeling paint, sun faded signs, the cracks in a pavement. I think those details communicate a history. And I think that history is just really moving to me. And again, I think that relates a little bit to anthropology, because anthropology is about history or prehistory, right? And with my buildings, there's this kind of quiet sadness that I feel. I feel that sadness, but it's also I feel this kind of reverence. I don't feel like I'm documenting the decay necessarily, but I feel like I'm listening to the story that that place wants to tell. And when I paint it, I'm trying to honor that.
Fascinating. And in going over all of your subject matter from the beauty of Arizona to the mundane aspects of the New Jersey suburbs, what do you hope people will take away from your work and its message about duality?
That beauty and meaning aren't reserved for the obviously grand or the traditionally beautiful. I think beauty and meaning can be found anywhere and are found everywhere, whether it's on my suburban street here or a deteriorating building, or even the way the light just hits something, I don't know, a piece of construction equipment, an old brick wall. I think I want to encourage viewers to slow down and look and find value in things that at first might seem boring or mundane. And as you noted, this kind of duality that you mentioned runs through my work. The duality is between urban and natural, between presence and absence, between decay and resilience. And I'm interested in how those things coexist and are sometimes juxtaposed, right, in a single moment or in a single space. So I guess whatever I paint, I'm exploring how time and memory and environment all interact with one another. And so if viewers leave with a greater appreciation for this kind of quiet complexity in the world around them, and an appreciation for the beauty that is there, and if they start looking for this beauty that is there all the time and around them all the time, I think if they do that, I'll feel like I've done my job.
That is so fascinating, Shara. Well, Shara, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today and share a deeper look into the creative world. We're excited to showcase your work in our exhibition, The Mundane in Motion, view from August 26th through October 19th, 2025. Thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks. It's great to talk to you.